There were strange things about being a 5-year-old in front of 260,000 people.
You had all this success touring with the Taylor Swifts and all these big Grammy nominations. Tell me what it means to you when you get applause or when you don't get applause.
Very early on, my relationship with love and acceptance and people liking me was all connected to things I would do. It was connected to performing. My identity was there. Like, who am I without any of that?
Tell me about the emotion that might have been coming up in that moment.
That was the scariest part about something not going well. Still obviously brings up a lot of emotions.
Why do you feel like at this time that this is important?
I've chased every version of the dream that I've seen, but what am I doing? Why am I here?
We've been taught everything except how to be human. I'm Miles Adcox, and this podcast turns raw experience into practical wisdom. So if you're ready to stop performing your life and start participating in it, you're in the right place. This is Human School. Most people know today's guest as a prodigy, someone who stepped into the world of music and on stages early. He wrote songs that stuck, earned Grammy nominations, and built a career many artists would dream about. But that's not the entire story. What stands out to me about today's guest is the human behind the music. He's someone who takes creativity seriously, not as a product, but as a responsibility. He writes with intention. He thinks deeply about how songs land in people's lives, not just how they chart. He's spoken openly about mental health, anxiety, and the inner world artists carry, and he's been willing to name the cost that comes with sensitivity, depth, and caring deeply. There's a tenderness to the way he approaches art, a belief that songs can be more than entertainment, that they can be companion pieces for people walking through hard seasons, almost like quiet therapy set to a melody. He's curious, he's thoughtful, he's not afraid to evolve, and he seems more interested in becoming than maintaining an image. So today isn't just a conversation about music. It's a conversation about creativity, pressure, identity, mental health, and what it looks like to grow up in public while trying to stay honest on the inside. I'm really grateful to welcome my friend Hunter Hayes to Human School.
Wow, thank you.
Welcome aboard, my friend.
That was profound. I sincerely appreciate so much of that. All of it, but specific pieces, I think, hit me really, really close to home.
What felt profound about it? I'm curious.
I think being seen for the intention behind music, I think it took me a while to figure out what I was doing with music. I knew I wanted to do music early on. I've chased every version of the dream that I've seen externally, and the work I think lately has been, let's say the past 6 or 7 years has been, okay, but what am I doing? Why am I here? Why am I the one making music? And what do I do with that? So I really appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's reflected, and I'm excited to kind of dance today between exploring some of what you've written, and which I think is a really beautiful album that I'm excited to talk about. And we'll vacillate between that, and I love for people to get to know the human behind the art. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about your story. But you did mention that. That is a theme I remember in your music about not wanting to live someone else's dream and stepping into your own congruency and your own path. And why do you feel like at this time in your world that this is important?
I think it's just the way the universe laid the lesson out. I mean, I just I have experienced. I mean, I've been so lucky and so blessed and so there's so much to be grateful for when I look at my path and my trajectory and all the things, and just what a beautiful part of my life to be experiencing the success of what I worked really hard for in the first, let's say, 10 years. And it's wild to say that because I'm only 34, and wow, am I grateful to be saying that at 34. But to be able to experience the success that I experienced, but also to have learned as much as I did, and to get, I'm always comparing it to Lego pieces because I really do feel like I got a box of Can I swear on this podcast? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, of course.
I got a box of a fuck ton of Legos. And now I get to do something new with it, build multiple things with it. I've learned so much. And, I experienced one version of the industry or several versions of the industry under one category, I think, for the first 10 years. And now I'm kind of beautifully positioned to sort of I can't call it a fresh start. It is a fresh start in so many ways, but the freshness has been taking control of the steering wheel, and not just sitting in the car and getting on the bus. And subscribing to
Well, I love the way you said what the lesson the universe is teed up for you right now.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of times when people write music about transformation or loneliness or anything related to mental wellness conditions, there can be a depth and a heavy feel. And sometimes it's hard to take those concepts and also infuse hope. But I really felt that as I followed it. As I followed it beginning to end, it was like, yeah, you got honest. You talked about lonely and looking for love and what the cost of that. But you also get into, which I love, is the optimist side towards the end. That line, by the way, is beautiful.
Thank you.
And you, as I see you, and we haven't seen each other, we know one another, and I haven't seen you in quite a while, is you have an energy right now that just feels like a rested presence. I don't know if I'm reading you right.
Thank God.
But it feels like you're somewhat in an optimistic, open-minded stance.
Yeah, I feel that way.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the road to get there and how you kind of arrived there. I know a lot of people right now that are listening are maybe chasing that and or on the opposite end of that, or maybe in the beginning of having gone through something difficult. And to me, you appear like somebody who's been doing some work, putting one foot in front of the other and really reclaiming who you are.
I appreciate that. Well, I mean, yeah, obviously we have a beautiful story as well. I mean, getting to meet you, knowing you for a long time outside of the context of this conversation, but also getting to know you in the context of this conversation, getting to work with you at some stages and some profound timing on that too. Working together on the day of the eclipse of all things.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
That was a big breakthrough for me. And then reaching out to you and, scheduling my first intensive with Mark and, I started the year with another intensive with him at Agni Eagle. And so that's something I've kind of committed to. And it's funny to me because I'll come out of it and say, I want to do that once a year. And I watch myself kind of get caught up in, I'm running out of time, And I think one of the things I wanted to take control of, I think, this year was, taking control in general of a lot of things. The way my brain works, I think there's been some profound breakthroughs for me about learning things I didn't know before this year about my brain and the way that I work that I think I'd fought against for a while, and now I'm starting to love and understand that it works the way that it wants to in specific ways. And I suppose we need to get into detail, not to make this too vague, but I'm starting to embrace it and love it. And I think that's helped me to work with it a little bit more. You bring up an interesting point in that talking about the things that I want to talk about in music is, my goal is not to be a heavy, deep feeling thing. I do believe that part of what I want to do is feel it to heal it. My dream would be somebody realizing 10 years on that they've felt like they've gone to therapy every time they've listened to my music. That wasn't intentional for a long time, but I was looking back last night as I was preparing for this conversation and thinking about music that I made before I came here. I just recently reconnected with Bart from Mercy Me.
Love Bart.
I was a huge fan of both Bart and the band. So many of those songs, I think musically they offered me something no one else did, which was every album was different. Every album was kind of its own genre. Every album also had its own theme. And it was always hopeful. It was always positive because there was always faith in it. Whether you identify religiously with what's being said or you just need hope. I think for me, I grabbed onto the hope. And I found myself writing one of the songs I wrote before I even moved to town. And when I was 15, I would have my mic in my little studio room and I would pretend that I would basically play an arena show in my head, which I didn't know anything about visualization or like manifestation, but I would sing this one song and I was so excited to hear this song in an arena one day, and it was called You're Not Alone. And so much of the songs that I wrote that I loved were stemming from that message and those things. So, learning a lot about that, learning how to write about those things and give people a safe place to feel, but without it being heavy, without it being weighted. Those things have weight. But also I think I'm learning something that my coach says often is what you focus on grows, right? And so I've found that I've always done that in my music, whether I knew it or not. Now it's nice to be aware of it and to assign that homework assignment. I did it yesterday in a writing session. We were writing about something seemingly heavy, but I was like, no, I think there is a lot of hope. And Will said it too, my co-writer. He was like, I feel like there's hope here. And I was like, absolutely, the whole thing's hopeful. So I really appreciate you saying that, and that's something I'm both passionate about, and it's very subconscious. It's just something I need, and I do believe that the best stuff comes, the best art we make is the stuff we make for ourselves, Yep.
Well said. That feels like something Rick and Rubin would say. He's become a little bit more outspoken the last 2 or 3 years, and I've always been a fan of obviously what he was behind putting out, but did you get in that guy's mind and hear him?
That book was monumental for me. It just unlocked certain little things. And I loved, by the way, I loved the discussion. I think Jacob Collier said something sort of contrary to what Rick was saying at the same time. And it was really beautiful to watch both of them have the conversation from different perspectives. One saying, well, I want to please my audience. And one saying, yes, and you have to create for yourself first. And sort of like, I love that discussion. I love bringing those two things into conversations because it's so fun to see kind of where people join that point in that conversation. But I do. I subscribe to the belief though. If you're in the origin, let's say for me in the writing process, if I feel it, if I'm crying writing it, somebody else will connect with it somehow. I have faith in that. I believe that.
I would imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, that that's a place that, well, I've even heard Rick reference that he didn't arrive there. It took years of creating and doing and the battle and the internal demons that come along with the creative process occasionally to arrive in somewhat of an evolved place where he's starting to enjoy what he does at this season of his career, and he enjoys mentoring other people. And what I remember about you, and we haven't seen each other in a little while, so I'm remembering more just being in your presence and having a conversation, is I remember what struck me early on was like, this guy's really a critical thinker. He thinks in a dualistic way. You're like, even then when you did the contrast, that was a great point, and here's another counterpoint. And I remember you being real curious in how you think, but also very thoughtful in your process. And that's what I was hearing when I was listening to this new record. It felt like there were parts of you that I identified on our journey that I now feel the way I listen to your most recent music, they feel integrated. And it's like, wow, this story is really coming together in a beautiful way. And as I said, I'm sure you mentioned, 34, which is still so young, and you mentioned 10 years. But I know your journey started super young. Was it early? It's like 3 or 4, is that right?
Yeah.
When you started doing music and actually started performing it?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm not going to pretend to remember any of this. I was 2-3 years old, but I've heard the story enough to recite it. I had a babysitter that would listen to music. I grew up in Louisiana, so music's everywhere, right? There's live music at almost every restaurant.
What part of Louisiana?
Breaux Bridge, Louisiana is where I'm from. I grew up in Lafayette, the area Lafayette. I tell everyone about Lafayette as the area, but Breaux Bridge is my hometown.
Yep.
I want to make sure to clean that. But live music everywhere. There's a festival every weekend somewhere that you can go to. There's live music at every restaurant. So my babysitter at the time, I was 2-ish, 1.5, 2, would have music on all the time. And apparently I started picking up things around and pretending they were instruments and imagining that I was performing with the performers. And so my grandmother gave me a toy accordion when I was, I think for my 2nd birthday. Again, I don't remember any of this, but I didn't put it down. Dad had to buy another one for parts to fix the one I wouldn't let go of. And we ended up with, when I moved to Nashville, I remember looking in the shop and there were 20 of those things hanging around for parts. And so I loved them, or some of them were in different keys. And I just started, my dad tells this story about, taking me to school, and I would play along to the radio, and obviously it was just noise. But there was one day, I think he heard me play something that sounded somewhat like the thing on the radio, and he says he pulled this truck over, and and asked me to play it again, and apparently I did. And yeah, I think we started going to those restaurants with my accordion. And one of the bands, I think, during on their break at Mulots, Richard LaBeouf, asked my dad, does he know anything? Does he want to come up and play? Playful, right? Like a 2-year-old, like quite the brave invite. And my dad was like, yeah, he knows these 3 songs. And so he was like, okay, well, next set, I think I went up and played with them. And then that kind of turned into a weekend thing. We'd go to festivals, and, you know, Dad would put me on the railing, and Wayne Toops saw me and like brought me up on stage and had me play a song. And I don't know, I think that's when I fell in love with both music and performing. They're very separate and intertwined, but that was kind of the origin story of it all.
2 years old. I just am trying to think. I'm a father of an 8 and a 6-year-old, and I'm trying to think about 2. It's hard to believe you were playing 3 songs on an accordion at 2 and able to stand up there on the stage and perform in front of people. And you don't remember, so you don't remember it, but you've heard the stories.
Yeah, I mean, I remember bits and pieces. Like, I remember when I was 4, you know, one of the things that launched my career moving to Nashville was this video that surfaced on YouTube right when YouTube started. Oh. And it was a video of me with Hank Williams Jr. from, 10 years before. I was on stage with Hank, Country Fest 1997. Or I guess I was 5 or 6. I don't know. I'm not good with math. I didn't go to college. But Hank brought me up on stage, and it aired on TNN at the time, which was old CMT. And that video ended up on YouTube, and that YouTube video started sort of making the rounds. It went viral at the time. It was considered viral, and which that led to me meeting Cindy Foreman from Universal. She reached out on MySpace of all things and was like, hey, I wondered what you were doing now that I was 16, and I found your MySpace, and it says you're writing all this and you're playing all these things. Are you really doing all that, But yeah, like I remember Country Fest 1997 very vividly. I was standing side stage. My dad gave me 2 Sharpies to play drums along with Hank Williams Jr.'s set. No way. And I busted both of them, and I had ink everywhere. I remember that. I also remember there was this like racing track with like lawnmowers. So I remember that. I don't remember being on stage at all. So I think there's both this like falling in love with music before realizing the crowd of it all. I think, honestly, it was realizing the crowd because there's obviously a relationship with like feeling loved as a kid that made me feel very elevated on stage. And there's parts of that, I think now that I've had to renegotiate, the nerves of, I think post-COVID especially, like the internal dialogue and all these internal stories and stuff. But yeah, at the time I was just, that was as high as you could get,
It's very difficult to heal in the same environment that broke you. That's why Onsite created 6-day immersive workshops where you can step away from the noise and give yourself the time and space to finally listen to what's underneath. So whether you come to Tennessee or California, we're here to welcome you with healing hospitality. Learn more at experienceonsite.com. What else was happening outside of music at that time? Tell me a little bit about the home you grew up in with your mom, dad. You have siblings. What was going on?
Only child.
Okay.
Which you can tell by how much I talk. And I'm proud of that. I think that was meant to be. Mom and dad, I mean, I was so lucky. I didn't have stage parents. I had a dad and a mom that worked as many jobs as it took for us to, live a decent, comfortable life. And I had parents that came with me to shows every weekend, right? It's difficult for me to talk outside of music because all I remember is music. And that was all I thought about and all I lived. And so I was obsessed. All of my hyperfixations have always been around music. At that point, right? But Mom and Dad and I would go to festivals and watch bands.
So they love music as well?
They loved music. They didn't play music. Funny story. Real quick, I'll finish with... I got to be around all 4 of my grandparents growing up. It was a loving environment. They each, so much of my personality comes from literally all 6 of those people, my 2 parents and my 4 grandparents. And I got to, when I started traveling to like sit in with bands, they all traveled with us. When I was 7 and playing gigs, my grandmothers were the merchandise, they were the merch salesmen. salespeople.
No way. It's amazing.
And my
Grandparents
dad
ran
and
the merch table.
yeah, my grandparents were behind the merch table every weekend, and my dad and my grandfather would help set up and get everything ready, get the trailers in. So, yeah, it was. My parents weren't musical at all. They loved music. My dad loves studying music, I think, like I do. We both hyperfixate on an album for about a month, and we learned everything about it that we can, including but not limited to the like producers and musicians and places that they were recorded. My mom loves music as well, but my mom is really athletic. She's a coach. She's coached every sport you can imagine. Played like professional softball.
Wow.
Like traveled. I didn't get any of that. So I carry a little bit of guilt for not being athletic at all. But yeah, so my mom, I was, I think 6 or 7. Somebody had given me a guitar for my birthday. Yeah, I got a guitar.
Is that your second instrument after the accordion?
It was
guitar? Drum. Oh, your Sharpies?
It was drums first. It was accordion, then drums. I really wanted a drum kit. I got one for Christmas, which really shows how much, like, we lived in a 900 square foot house. My parents were saints for getting me a drum set at 5 years old. So then it was the guitar, and my mom
You remember
decided,
the first guitar, what it was?
Yeah, I do. It was a little tiny small scale Samick electric guitar. It came with an amp, and it was a gift from this is wild. Robert Duvall was in my hometown filming a movie, and he saw me playing at the same restaurant where I started playing. And he came over to my mom and dad's, our table, and he asked us all to kind of, if we wanted to go be extras in the scene that they were filming. And, my dad and my grandfather are the kind of people who you're either best friends with them or you haven't met them yet, And so I think my dad struck up a conversation with him, and they just got to talking, and I think he invited them to my birthday party, and they stopped in, and he gave me a guitar.
Wait.
Robert Duvall. A lot.
Comes to your birthday party.
I know,
and gives you your first guitar. That's
Yeah.
He's in my top 10. I love that dude's acting ability. I
It's
watched
incredible.
a lot of his early films. I think he's really brilliant. But I've never really heard a Robert Duvall story until now. I had no idea. That's amazing. Outside of the ones around his films and stuff, that's pretty cool.
They were so down to earth. And yeah, so like my 6th birthday party, for context, there was a place in my hometown that would host a jam session every Sunday, and it was and there's still 8x10s on a wall outside of Bayou Boudin in the little porch that they have out there, of all the musicians I grew up with, which were all my age, and everybody was jamming on Sunday. There were 30 kids under 10 years old, and there were 3 bands that like came out of that group of kids. So I was just surrounded by music, right? And my birthday party was a jam session, and he stopped by. Him and Louisiana stopped by very quickly. I think they were on their way out of town, to be fair, but yeah, stopped by, gave me a guitar. So that started it. I was playing a lot of gigs just on accordion, which that's not really an instrument you want to solo on. And my mom was like, well, I'm going to go and take guitar lessons so that I can accompany you. And she took 2 weeks of this one guitar class. She would come home every night and teach me the chords. And so I learned it from her, technically, and then she never picked up the guitar again after that 2 weeks.
No way.
So I technically learned guitar from my mom. And I have to give her credit, because if not, I'm going to face a lot of grief for this when she watches this.
What's mom's name?
Yeah, Lynette.
Lynette.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Lynette and Leo.
That's pretty cool that Lynette didn't even necessarily have an interest in it, but she had such an interest in you. She wanted to learn it enough so she could pass it along.
It is pretty incredible.
That's awesome. Lynette. Go Lynette. We'll give her a shout out right now. You'll probably get some more as this conversation goes, but that's pretty baller.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Lynette and Leo.
Leo's dad?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you picked up the guitar, and after you learned those chords, tell me what happened from there. Did you already know after the accordion and drums, this is what I'm going to do? Did you know at an early age, or was it you get the guitar at 7, you take to that too. Because I'll say it's a fascinating part of your story, and I'm sure everybody asks about it, and I can't help but not, because it's so different than a lot of artists that I know and a lot of creatives that I know. And I remember when I've been around, even though I work in psychology, I've been around the music industry and worked around it too for most of my career, and I remember when you kind of came to town, and it's like, here's this, wait, he's playing all the instruments on his record? He plays how many? 30, something great, 30 instruments or something, I remember. It's like, how does somebody have time to consume and do all that, and then the mindset to even want to pursue it? So I don't want to spend a ton of time here, because I would imagine this is like the low-hanging fruit question everybody asks you, but I'm real curious about it, like the origins of it and how it happened and how it's informed you as a musician.
Yeah. Yeah, what parts? I'll go off on it. I'll go down the rabbit hole as much as you'll let me. Yeah.
The rabbit holes. Yeah, I think this is what this is for. We got time.
Yeah.
I love the stories and love hearing about kind of what drove you that way.
Well, I grew up in Louisiana. There's a lot of Cajun music, so I still don't speak French. My dad tried to teach me, and I failed that
But
class.
Your dad does? He speaks French?
He does. Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
Cajun French.
Okay.
Half of my family, if not most of, like, my grandparents all spoke French. Obviously, that's how they communicated about me when I was in the room. But so I grew up around a lot of Cajun music, and looked up to, like I think of, Richard LaBeouf. I grew up, listening. I just ran into him when I was in Louisiana for a show recently. Just a fun on-stage personality. Like, talk about good energy. When I think about good energy, or just like walking into the room with good energy, I still go back to Richard. Wayne Toops was doing, Wayne was surrounded by monster musicians, some of which are responsible for my move to Nashville. My buddy Rick wouldn't have moved to Nashville without his encouragement. I get emotional thinking about it, because I can't count how many conversations he had with my parents, just saying, like, you gotta trust me, believe in this, because it was scary leaving hometown and pursuing something with this, like, great big world of music, and it's like, does he have what it takes? Can he compete, right? Can he be part of it? And Rick was always really encouraging and introduced me to so many people, Eddie, and I'll get into that later. But Wayne was doing, and with all these musicians, was doing this new age Cajun music. And he was bringing this traditional music and bridging it with the sounds of the 80s and 90s and like pop music or rock music, and was traveling the world with Cajun music, introducing it to different people by modernizing it. And like, as a kid, that was awesome. It was basically Journey meets Cajun music. It was amazing. So, and the shows were tight. The band has always been tight. He's always had the most incredible like arrangements and just stupid good musicality. And then you had like Steve Riley, who, keeping traditions alive. Like, Steve still to this day is like so much of the albums that come out of Louisiana that are paying tribute to the people who laid the path. Steve is responsible for those projects. And he's won awards for it. And so that's what I grew up around. Like, that was Cajun music. That was the culture where I grew up. And everybody was doing a version of one of those things. And I just loved it. It was fun. That's also the reason why so much of my music has such an emphasis on 16th note subdivisions, because Cajun music is 16th note subdivisions. It's busy, all things considered, but that's what makes it move and makes you feel it. And
Explain what that is, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so my manager, I've done this with my manager a million times, both sober and not. But the 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 and 2 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's Cajun music. It just makes you feel good. It lifts you up, in my opinion. It lifts me out of my seat. It makes, it's great dancing music. So I grew up around a ton of that. And I loved it. And so I would learn those songs and sit in. And at the same time, I was listening to Garth Brooks. I think with, Dad would listen to Journey or Fleetwood Mac or like James Brown, Otis Redding. Mom was listening to a lot of country. So at the time it was Brian White. It was, I got introduced to Diamond Rio, 3-part harmonies. Again, chef's kiss. Garth, you know, was the like the image on stage of like, okay, maybe that looks like the ultimate. That looks like the bar, you know, the guy who's flying around stadiums singing country music and doing a rock show, you know. So all of those things were just kind of coming into my world at the same time, 5, 6, 7 years old. And that was, I lived and breathed, you know, every instrument. It was accordion. I played accordion nonstop for years, and then I got my drum kit, and then that was a whole year. And then it was the guitar, and then it was, you know, somebody else, you know, gave me a little keyboard that I used. I think actually Mom and Dad got that for me as a gift. And it was just a lot of like random instruments kind of ended up in the house, and me just getting obsessed with them, and just
Do you still love playing a lot of instruments, or is there one you're really drawn to?
all of them.
Really? Is there one you haven't learned to play that you hope to?
Oh, yeah. I mean, every time I pick up a violin to try to play strings, I really want to be able to arrange strings on my album. I don't intend to be the only player, but I want to be able to at least craft ideas. And I've yet to have enough patience to sit with that for longer than about a month. Haven't really gotten there yet. Also really want to be good with like brass. You know, I love horn sections and horn arrangements. There's so many bands now that have kind of found, I mean, Olivia Dean, right? Like so much of that record is just so elegantly arranged with horns.
I love the way John Batiste integrates a lot of that in.
Great example. Yeah. Stunning. So those are on the list for later. But yeah, I don't know. I love writing on piano because I can close my eyes and disappear. I love, if I write on guitar, I'll noodle. I like noodling on guitar. I like performing on guitar, because it's a little bit more expressive. You know, you can dig into the strings. You can, you know, use it as percussion. You can make it into a lot of different things. And I feel like and obviously you can walk with it. So that makes it a little bit more flexible. That's why I like guitar for performing. I like writing on piano, but man, I also love sitting in a drum kit and playing drum tracks for these songs. Some of the tracks that I play end up on albums, and some of them I just put in front of other drummers, and I'm just like, all right, dude, like start here, but like obviously put you over this.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. It sounds like kind of an idyllic childhood in some ways, in that you had your parents, your grandparents, and I think that's one of the things we miss in today's world is it gets pretty fragmented, and we kind of get that two-person household, and you're separated a lot from your extended family. But actually, if you study sociology and psychology, the more you can kind of be raised by a village, especially from trusted caregivers and extended family members, the better. And it sounds like you kind of had a cool experience there where everybody was around you. You were chasing a dream, and they were in some ways a part of it, you know, putting some wind behind your sails. And when was the first time that you had, because it seems like I remember you did as a kid, you got launched onto a national stage somewhere. Was it a show or something, TV show or something like that, a talent competition?
Well, it was the Hank Williams Jr. performance, really. After that, you know, we did like Rosie O'Donnell.
What age were you when you did Rosie?
6.
Wow. So you were doing that. Did you feel pressure in those moments as a kid? Do you even remember? Or was it just
No, I felt competitive.
I
I didn't feel pressure at all. And to be honest, I didn't feel competitive. There was one show that I did Mari a few times, and he would do kind of like a kids, a combination of kids. But honestly, even thinking back at that, like I remember, you know, looking up to so many of those kids around me and kind of being jealous in some cases because they were also talented in different ways. I'm thinking of one in particular. He just had the confidence and charisma on stage. And I just wanted to be like that. Yeah, it wasn't pressure. I was excited to show the thing that I loved.
Excited, and you love doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So when did you, tell me about that, and then when you moved to Nashville, what age was that?
So, I think I was 12 or 13. I had made an album. I had made my first. I made three, I guess, albums in Louisiana that were kind of a bridge between Cajun music and like I had started writing. I think to tell the Nashville story, I have to kind of back up a little bit. I found songwriting early. When I was like 6, I started making stuff up, and I think that was kind of like having a notebook for the first time. And then as I got into middle school, all of a sudden that became a very important thing to have, and that gave me safety, and that gave me somewhere to go, whether it was processing, which I didn't know that at the time, or it was just a safety, I don't know, a place to feel better in general.
And you reference you use it to journal and write music? Or
well, I was just writing music.
Just writing music,
but I think
that was your way of expressing yourself and getting...
100%. Yeah. That was my way of letting it go somewhere, doing something with it.
And you were feeling secure and safe in that process. It gave you...
Yeah, because no one's around. No one can hear. No one hears until the song's done. And that's also, that became the safe space that still is how I operate, and still is like, right now it's a couple days a week, where the phone's on Do Not Disturb, and I'm in that safe place, whether I'm writing or working on production. But finding songwriting and falling in love with it and creating a relationship with it, naturally, the way that my brain works, it wasn't just, okay, well, I got to figure out how to write songs. It was, no, it's got to be done. I have to figure out how to finish this. Both, I think, because we didn't really have the resources to like get a band or get a studio together, but also the not knowing, like, am I good enough to even have a band recording the songs that I'm writing? Are these songs good enough? And needing very much the safe environment to grow and learn. So that's where the playing everything came from. It was just like kind of a necessity. Write a song. Okay, I can't stop hearing it, at school, etc. And I couldn't wait to get home. And I just started slowly building a studio, one Christmas gift at a time, or one little. I did wedding videography when I was in middle school to pay for my first Pro Tools rig. So it was anything that it took, because we had an equipment trailer full of band gear, so I had access to the gear. I had the time. I just needed to figure each song out. And I fell in love with that process, because I think that feeling of like hearing a song when you write it, and it just playing in your head until you've made it, is still one of the most addictive feelings that I have. I still love that part of the process. So that really launched a lot of that opened my world up a lot. And I made an independent album called Songs About Nothing. And I loved making it. It's wildly experimental, but I had a lot of fun making it. It was a lot of writing, and I did some songs that weren't mine too. And I think that was kind of my okay, I'm starting to realize what I want to be, what I want to do. And that's what I started taking to Nashville. So we would take me, Mom, Dad, Rick, would all get in the Suburban after school. My mom was a school teacher. My dad had his full-time job. So we'd do nighttime driving Friday nights, typically on a weekend where there was like a holiday. So we'd have at least 3 days in Nashville, and then we'd drive through the night to get back, take as many meetings as we could with literally anybody we could take them with, and start the process of just making.
So pre-Nashville, you didn't have any formal representation yet?
No.
You didn't have management or anything?
No. A friend of mine, Tony Ardwant, introduced my music to Scott Hendricks. And then Cindy Foreman found me independently on MySpace. And so Cindy found me, to be fair, that happened really early. I would say first. And so I ignored her message on MySpace because I didn't think it was real. And then a month later, she messaged me again. I showed it to Dad, and we wrote back. I put the two of them in touch, and we had a meeting with Cindy Foreman and Pat Higdon. And, I played them songs, and Pat kind of introduced us to, I had learned a lot about the publishing world so far as I knew that there was a world in which I could start just writing, and that really excited me, both for my own career as an artist, but also just as a writer. This is kind of three potential worlds sitting in front of me: writing for myself, writing for other people, or just learning to write. And so we just kept taking trips to Nashville, and things were slowly starting to happen. And I met Ansel, who was kind of my Music Row. I felt like I had Music Row family. I'd assign them different roles in the family depending on different parts of our career together. In some cases, they would act as parents. In some cases, they would act as uncles and aunts or crazy cousins. But that time period, everything sort of started happening from different corners at the same time, and opportunities started to show up so far as, I had started negotiating with Universal to do a publishing to write with them, and I had talked to a lot of labels, and things were starting to happen in that category as well. So, I got kind of serious about it. We, as a family, Mom and Dad and I got serious about it in my junior year of high school, and I came to visit the guidance counselor towards the end of junior year, and I had been going to, again, Mom and Dad working multiple jobs to get me into a private school in Louisiana where I was kind of doing some college prep stuff. Really positioned me well. Did not see it that way at the time, but it positioned me well. And the guidance counselor was basically like, you only need more credit to graduate. You could basically do a half day, and then you could go write. And I was like, dream. And somehow, towards the last week of my junior year, she called my mom and said, listen, I've got a proposal. We've got juniors who have been accepted into their college who are taking an accelerated course to finish this course in the summer. We've not tried this, but if he wrote a letter to the superintendent, and I'm obviously piecing a lot of these pieces together, but basically if I wrote a letter to the superintendent, I could potentially go and take this class with me saying I'm not going to college, but I got an offer to be a songwriter full time, and I'm committed to it. So I wrote a letter, and Mom drove to Nashville 2 days later, found a rent house, enrolled me, and less than a week later we were, suburban trailer moving to Nashville, and Mom found a job. Rick kind of came to help me in the studio / I was still playing shows at the time, so there was a little bit of juggling.
But you were booking your own shows, or your parents were helping you a little bit?
Dad was booking all the shows. Yeah. So yeah, it was that. Then it was just lightning from there. I finished my early graduation course over the course of the summer. So I can technically say I graduated at 16, which feels really official, even though I didn't do anything with it. And then I just went straight into songwriting. My first songwriting session was with anyone else, was with Luke Laird.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, what a way to start.
A legend.
And then, it was everybody from Travis Meadows to Barry Dean to, Troy Verges, Gordy Sampson was on that list too, and Busby was in that. Like within the first year, I was in the room with all of these people who are still a huge part of my story. So, yeah, it was definitely, the whole thing is just saying yes to as many things as you can and letting God do what he's doing.
Yeah, I want to bookmark for a minute because I'm glad you walked us slowly through that story, because there's a lot of that. I know you, and I didn't know a lot of those pieces of that story. It's really interesting. But you talked about your journal, your notebook. You even pulled it over. I don't know what you call it, a notebook journal. And you talked about how you spending a lot of time in there, so much so it's even part of your rhythm now, a couple of days a week. There's actually some data and science that supports that, whether you're writing music or just writing your words or pouring your story out into it. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's an underutilized tool that I think there's a lot of people that just compound their thoughts and their emotions. And if they don't have anybody formally to talk to, they don't feel like they have another outlet. And I think that can be such a useful outlet. And we prescribe it all the time. Those of us in my space, we're like, to get into a journaling practice. But often we don't hear from somebody who's really built it as a huge integral part of their story and started so young in doing it. So I'd love to hear you illuminate that a little bit on the value of it, why it's important. Why was it a stress reliever? What was stressful and why going there, maybe historically and even currently?
I know that in middle school, what I remember is it was just easier than expressing out loud. I didn't really know how to. I had friends. I also felt really lonely. Both, you could say for several reasons, I'm sure. I think, I sort of was living this crazy double life where I went to school 5 days a week, but I also had this whole career on the side that I didn't really talk about with anybody at school. I think middle school was kind of this like defining line of separation where like I would go play shows, but I don't know if it's because I thought it wasn't cool or I didn't think they understood or like, I don't know. I kept it separate for some reason. At that time, I guess it just felt safer, which I think led to a lot of isolation by choice. I didn't realize I was choosing that, but that felt safer as well. So, songwriting became my version of journaling. Anything that I felt strongly, I would just hear in song form. It was easier to sing it than it was to say it, I think. So in a lot of ways, I kind of cheated my way into journaling. And I think that's something that I encourage a lot of my friends to do. Like, it might not be journaling. It might just be finding a place to put things, and giving yourself a safe space to express that. Because I know for me, like I don't read very well. I've learned this recently. So even journaling and that attention span that it takes to journal can be difficult. But getting something out quickly is effective and is helpful. Or sketchbooks, etc., have helped me a lot. Just putting things in places and knowing that they're all safe until I get back. But yeah, I mean, songwriting was just turning feelings into something I could do something with felt better. I wouldn't even call it most of it songwriting. Like when I think back, it wasn't about having big songs. It wasn't about trying to write like so-and-so. I was influenced, right? A lot of my stuff sounded like either Mercy Me or Rascal Flatts or Keith Urban or Brad Paisley, But it was just a way to do something with the stuff I'd gone through so that I think I was just trying to get rid of it,
Well, I think about, in some ways, I talked about idealistic, and in some ways, I guess there is no idealistic childhood. We all go through a little bit of adversity. I think it's kind of designed that way. Some get a better hand than others. But you had, what I was referring to as idealistic earlier was it seems like you had secure attachment among your caregivers, which is kind of cool and not as common as you might think.
Yeah.
But the unidealistic part is where other kids in their downtime were playing and socializing and hanging out. You were already doing adult activity, going to perform. So I could totally see how that could create, especially when you didn't feel like expressing that to your peers at that time, just made sense for whatever reason or another. I could see how that would feel a little bit lonely, that part of your story. And I want you to hear, if you're listening, that really what we're talking about when it comes to writing is a form of expressing yourself. It's just taking your feelings that live within you and putting them out, even on paper. And I personally like doing it. I know now journaling with your phone is a common thing. People are using their notepads, but there's something about it, being analog in a digital world. There's something about slowing down enough to pick up a pen and to actually write something that I think that practice alone slows down our thoughts. It can help right-size our feelings. And often, loneliness, it's an epidemic right now out in the world. There's so many people that are sitting alone with their feelings, and not everybody has access to counseling. It can be a great opportunity for people if they're going through loneliness or finding a relationship that they trust. And we hope that a lot of people might have those opportunities. But here's something right up front that I want to encourage people to give it a try, because I think it's that important. I do it not as consistently as you. It's a practice for me, but I don't have it that systematic. Whereas 2 days a week I'm doing this at all costs. I'm kind of encouraged by that, 'cause I need to get back to that, because ultimately, a lot of loneliness is kind of this perception we build in our mind. In whether it's real or not, whether we are actually alone or not, is not the point. It's that we may feel alone. Right. And if we feel alone and we're holding that perception, then our internal processing system is going to have the same result. It's still going to feel like we've got a little bit of a bug or a virus, and therefore we're under threat in some kind of way. Then the idea is creatively, through music, through poetry, through words, through talking to another human being, if we can get that out of us, all the data is very clear that our ambient stress starts to go down. It can shift our perception, and we might not feel as alone with our thoughts because our thoughts are now shared even with a piece of paper. So I just want to say that to anybody out there listening, that that's an effective tool that I wouldn't take lightly. And I'm glad to hear that that's been through your story from the very beginning. I appreciate you too saying that, because some people might look at your story and think, what a talented human who had great parents that got behind him and started, having national recognition at 3 years old and coming to Nashville, and every label in town's interested in him at this age. And for you to express, and it was incredible. And there were parts of it that were lonely.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to hear that and get that kind of context. I could certainly hear it in the lyrics that you're writing even today, that wasn't maybe just something you experienced, in middle school, but that something maybe you've experienced even in adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you sort of giving space to talk about that too, because I was very lucky. I had all four of my grandparents traveling with me. I have a great relationship with my parents, and I know how lucky I am to get to say that. And yeah, I mean, there was, whether it be perceived loneliness or, accidentally designed, and, we can either figure out how to go into some of these if they're useful, focusing on what I focus on. There are a lot of beautiful parts to my childhood. And I have to acknowledge that there were some things I'm still learning from, there were dynamics, and there were strange things about being a 5-year-old in front of 260,000 people. There were things that come with that you don't even think about. Even as a parent, I don't know that I'm not a parent. I want to be. But I think of myself as a parent looking at that sometimes, and I'm like, I don't even know what I would say. I don't even know where to start, and like supporting, but also like kind of just holding space for like whatever comes up as a result. The relationship with love, or being loved for doing versus being loved for being, right? I think that's something I've had to work through quite a lot in different phases, because very early on, my relationship with love and acceptance and people liking me was all connected to things I would do. It was connected to performing. It was connected to if I did a good enough job, that was love. And so that's been a lifelong unraveling and renegotiation with my relationship with all those things.
Gosh, I think we talk about that for a minute, because I think it's highly relatable. And I think even whether you're on a stage in front of 250,000 people, or I think about my son at 8 who's playing, I'm coaching his basketball team. Totally unequipped to do that, by the way. I don't know how to coach a basketball team. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Okay.
It's been amazing. I'm a few games in. It's amazing how nervous I've been to coach 8-year-olds. Even though the stakes aren't high, it doesn't mean that much, but it's just like, it's just new. And I'm trying to figure out, how do you guide these little ones into that should be primarily about fun, and but yet they're competitive, and I want to steward that in the right way. I'm competitive, but I don't want to be that guy that's like, we got to win,
Yeah.
But I watched this happen with my son with our last game, which was on Sunday. And he's got a bit of a knack for it. He's kind of a natural little athlete, and he awesome. So it's been fun to watch him. So last year he wasn't quite developed enough and wasn't even really tall enough to get it up to the rim. And now he's starting to score. He's one of the scorers on the team. And there's another kid that hasn't developed there yet, and is a different kind of position player. He's better on defense and rebounding. And I'm learning with these kids that I'm trying to pour into them and say every position matters to the outcome, and it's not about scoring. So I'm trying to reward them for passing, and reward them for rebounding, and reward them for defense. But what they see and what they watch on TV is Steph Curry shooting three-pointers.
Right. And
unless I'm making three-pointers like Steph Curry, then there's really not much to cheer about. And so and I'm trying to get equal playing time, and I watch the younger ones get frustrated that aren't scorers. The ones that aren't scorers necessarily are getting frustrated. But the other night I had this interesting conversation with my son where he said, we came home, we were debriefing the game a little bit. And he said, when so-and-so scored, everybody cheers and goes crazy. I wonder why they cheer more for him than they do for me. And I thought right away, my son's already tying that what you talked about, that chasm between, for me to get recognition or applause or to be seen, I have to do this thing. And it opened up this beautiful conversation, but I had a hard time trying to figure out how you explain that to him. Just in the same way you were saying, if I were a parent, what do you say to a 5-year-old that gets thrust into that moment? So I think it's why I said it's so relatable, and I wanted to slow it down, because first you go to logic, and I'm like, well, they're used to you scoring. So when you get used to something, they're not, and that was new for him. He scored, and that was a big deal. We kind of all want to share the love, but that kind of went right over his head. He couldn't quite connect the dot. But then I kind of backed out of it a little bit, and I said, tell me what it means to you when you get applause or when you don't get applause. And then he got into the feelings of it a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I feel a little sad if they don't. And I said, well, let's talk about that. And then we kind of unpacked that a little bit. So I didn't come away with a conclusive answer. Here's what you should say. But it was such an important dialogue that I think we need to talk more about, because I think now we're living in this world where whether you have the kind of platform that you've had or you have, and the kind of platform that I've had and continue to build, everybody that is in on a digital landscape, social media, has a platform. If you've got one follower, you got a platform.
Yeah.
And you've got eyes on who you are and how you move. And I'm seeing more and more of the world, and I'm wondering if it's not tied to the loneliness epidemic that we're hearing about, and the mental health statistics that are just growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. That's one of the reasons why I like talking to people like you, because you are someone who had been experiencing this from a very young age and probably struggled with it up through current time, because I still struggle with it. I'm still trying to figure it out, about how who we are is not necessarily tied to external validation. And that's what was so encouraging about your music and this album, by the way. It was, I don't want to live somebody else's dream. I finally woken up and decided I want to do this for me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of that.
Where do I begin? Man, I remember sitting in 2000, I guess it would have been 15, with my good friends, and my buddy John was like, yeah, man, like, you're a whole human outside of your career. And that was so impossible for me to process, because I was like, no, I'm not. It's like, I don't exist outside of my work. That just like, that kind of shattered a lot. I don't know where to begin. I could talk about my relationship with social media, which very proud right now. I've got a brand new relationship with social media. Intensive helps. But so honestly, maybe there's a little thread we could follow for a second. But I noticed that the thing I hated about it previously was that there was no more play. And I reincorporating that. So like right now, I've got a little bit of time before a tour starts. I want as many people to know that I'm doing that tour as possible. I want to be good at social media. I want to be good at being on social media. That's something I told my manager last year. I was like, I don't want to be good at doing social media. I do want to be good at being on social media, which I think there's a subcategory of like establishing myself as a human and then deciding what parts of that am I okay putting into the world. What do I, what's safe for me to share? What parts do I want to share? I want to share I'm a nerd. Right? Like, I want to share all the nerd stuff that I'm into, whether it be music or flying or my weird hyperfixations that pop up every month, the ways my brain works that I feel like I've seen a lot of people, kind of want more conversation around. Not me, but just in general. So, like, that's a part of it, like, it kind of shutting all of that off, right? Which is where intensives are really helpful, because I've not looked at a social, I don't know if I should, I'm going to say it. Part of my like sobriety this year is social media, not watching any of it, touching, consuming, which again, another subcategory for like trying to stay in touch with the world and stay a part of the world. But identity here first, and then figuring out what parts of that I want to bring over. But I said I want to be better at being on social media, and the more I examined that, the more I was like, I love videos. I paid for my first Pro Tools rig by being a wedding videographer when I was in middle school. And I loved holding a Handycam. It was a heavy Steadicam rig at the time, right? I loved it. I loved using different lenses. I loved the editing process. Hated it at first. Fell in love with it. And then I got into making independent movies with my friends. Like we would go and, make these crazy films that made no sense whatsoever, and I loved it. Hated the screenwriting process, loved filming, loved lighting, loved framing, all those things. And so then, like, at the front end of my, like, sort of, like, public career, major label public season, I would, that was right when everybody was doing weekly vlogs on YouTube. So I was like, I can do that. So carried a bunch of flip cameras around, which, what a time to be alive. And just loved editing. I was always late delivering my weekly vlogs, but I loved doing it because it was a way for me to share the parts of me I was comfortable sharing. Because I think being in the big system of the industry, right, things start moving very fast. And I think my way of grasping what control I could was deciding what parts of me I wanted people to see and know. So in a lot of ways, I have an emotional moment about that, but in a lot of ways, that gave me a chance to be safe and be seen, which I loved, because I would edit it, right? So I could cut pieces out. I could turn the camera off. And then I traveled around with my buddy Brandon. Brandon was my videographer for 4 years, and he was by my side for literally every part of my life. And so now it was someone I trusted videoing and also editing. And we were putting out this series called For the Love of Music. And I am still really proud of that sort of platform. So when the social stuff started getting kind of like, I think during COVID, I dove into, okay, what parts of the work can I do, right? I'm finishing an album. Okay, let me design a live concert streaming experience. And I got to do a handful of those. And then it was like, okay, well, for visibility, we should probably be more present on socials. And that's been all kinds of versions of, like, early on, I think, when Instagram first came out, right? Like, it was, we've all experienced so many different versions of all of it. I was just trying to figure out, like, what needed to happen for success. I'm not afraid of work. At 12, I was, waking up at 7 a.m. and passing out coupons at a breakfast diner to beg them to come to my show in Branson, Missouri. And I was stoked when 13 people showed up in a 1,000-seat theater. So work is not, I don't care about the effort. But I have to know why I'm there, I think, is my big thing. Why it's not, what makes me, if I'm going to, because I'm going to focus on every detail, right? That's just the way that I work, and I'll get obsessive about certain things. So if I'm going to do that, then obviously I have to know that I care. I have to know that I'm supposed to be here, not just because this is something I'm expected to do. But, like, I never had a problem with, 6 flights a day to go on radio tour to beg people to play my music. I enjoyed that. I found pieces of that I enjoyed. I, never had a problem with playing 200 shows a year. There were easily pieces of that I enjoyed. So, kind of renegotiating, okay, I want to be good at being on socials. I'm still retraining how I say it. And I just want to play more. I think that was the intensive realization for me was, the play is missing. Because I think the conversation was like, okay, well, let's let the child self step aside while you work to build these social platforms. And I was like, no, that's the problem. He wants to be here. He wants to be part of it too. And I've locked him out of it for so long. So that was a big piece of it. And there is, I'm skipping ahead, and we can slow down at any point, but it is that tough thing about, I connect very much with the question, the discussion around why are we on socials, right? For every person, it's so vastly different. It's become, but it's so, like, what is the Venn diagram today? It is a marketing platform. It's also a place for people to feel seen, right? So, like, how does that not create conflict
Right.
by nature? So, yeah, I don't know.
Well, what I was hearing you say, especially, I love the way you broke out the kid part of you that wants to be there. Because I was hearing you say, when you say play, it's like I really want to be congruent and not performative, and I've really struggled with that because it's like there's something. Even I love storytelling too. That's what I was hearing when you were like, I nerd out about holding the camera and the wave. I was like, I think you're just a born storyteller. You just love story and engaging with it and telling it and capturing it and editing it and how do you tell the story. And I feel like there's a part of me that's really drawn to that too. And then there's some unnatural abilities, unnatural elements, not abilities, unnatural elements that come with the storytelling process, especially when you're on the other end of the camera and you're not talking to people, you're talking to people who you have no control over who's watching and how they're going to perceive it and who's out there. And I'm talking to this thing, this box. And that's been hard. That's been hard for me because, my team is phenomenal. They're so encouraging. They're so patient. They're so graceful because I have an obsessive element too. I tested on the obsessive compulsive disorder screen. There's several screens, but the primary screen, I'm really high on the obsessive. I'm not enough on the compulsive to land on the diagnosis, but I took note of that years ago. I was like, so my brain really can take something and just roll around in it a long time, and that's been a gift and a curse and a burden at times. There's times I can rabbit hole. I'll go down something and get really good at something and want to master it, and other times it really hangs me up and gets me in my perfectionism. A little bit of both, but what you as you were telling that part, like when you got into the wedding photography part, and I think you used maybe your buddy, was it Brandon? Is that right?
Yeah, Brandon.
You said I'm getting emotional about this, and then you kind of jumped to that. I was curious, what was that bringing up? Tell me about the emotion that might have been coming up in that moment.
Probably just like probably three things. One, I loved how I wish that everyone at some point, and in a lot of ways I think there are, and maybe you can kind of help bring real world examples into how people can enjoy this, because I wish everyone at some point in their life could experience what it's like to have a mirror, have a videographer, have a friend that recalls what they saw in you during an experience. Getting to watch your life from someone else's lens is a gift and a half. And I think there was so much a part of that I'm so deeply grateful for, because I still look back on so many of those things, and I think there's a part of it that's like, I feel like that all went so fast. It was moving fast, and to be fair, I was pressing the gas all the time. So, and it was moving really fast. Like, the common question is, what would you tell your younger self? And it's like, slow the fuck down and chill the fuck out. Like, everything's gonna be fine, but also slow down. Try to enjoy it. And Ansel always told me that. That's something that he said constantly. But I think when I think of that time, and I think of that, it's just being seen.
Oh, that's
it's just
cool.
being seen in such a pure way. Because we were both, I consider him to be a close friend. At least at the time. We've not, we don't work together as much and anymore. And I think that's a third piece. So many of the people that I was close to were also people that I was working with, which so many of those people have continued to show up and check in. And I've stayed close to so many of the people I was afraid to lose. But for maybe a couple of years where I kind of self-isolated, but for a long time, I mean, fuck, that was the scariest part about something not going well, was losing all of my friends, Still obviously brings up a lot of emotions. But the people that were meant to stay or come back have all found their way back. And in some of the most random ways too. But that's worth saying, being in a position where so many of the people that I worked with, so many of my friends were people that I worked with. That was an extension of if I perform, etc.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you shared that, because I've obviously, my social circle, I'm friends with a lot of people in your profession, and I've tried to be a good advisor, mentor to a lot of people in your profession, professionally, and often just because it's my social circle. Yeah. And I've seen it's an unusual thing to have people around you when you're aggressively touring or promoting or whatever cycle you're in, to where there's not a lot of time to invest in your social circle. So that becomes your social circle. And yet most people in that circle are getting a percentage of what you earn in some way. Yeah. So it's, ideally, when we build relationships, we hope we have some we're all going to have some that are transactional. That's okay. They can be good too. Yeah. And some that are just purely relational. And when you have no bandwidth for those and 90% of your time is being around the transactional element, then you quickly find out who in this transactional experience are really see me for me.
Yeah. And
what's cool is you always find some that do. There's always some that do. Sounds like Brandon maybe was one of those guys.
Absolutely.
And I've got those on my team too. And now that I'm trying to learn how to be in front of a camera a little bit more comfortably and create content, it's such an interesting, and I love it, and it drives me crazy and bananas. And because I don't have enough bandwidth to constantly be on thinking about creative thoughts and getting them so soundbitey that people would care to share them or consume them in a short little section. I'm a long form communicator. I take my time. I'm slow, which doesn't really work for the formula, and they always are encouraging me. And it took me a minute to get what they were doing, because they would say, because I had a mild TBI from a head injury back in 2010, and I had a challenge with that multi-years later, like 3 or 4 years ago, right around 2020, I had something kind of shake loose and multiple concussive syndrome, and it started to create some brain fog, memory issues. And the content I used to feel like I could recall in real time got harder. Like even stuff I've been swimming in for years, my own content, I couldn't remember it and recall it. It made give and talk super hard for a little while, because I used to be able to just grab what I wanted and I couldn't find it. And so then I was like, well, maybe I need to learn how to start using a prompter, write my content, script it, be able to naturally deliver it and that's so hard for me, because I also struggle reading. I never was a prolific reader. And so I'm trying to embody it, deliver it. And they would always say to me, we'll ride with you on that train, but you are so much better. You're really good when you do it unscripted and just do the thing up. And at first I was hearing that would be after I'd turn something in, and I'd be like, okay.
Super helpful.
so you hate what I gave you. Really what they were doing there, some of them were in the room with me. So they're probably,
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
But is they were like, no, we have a deep belief in what you have to say. And it took a minute for me to not hear it as criticism. And it sounds like what Brandon did for you. If you can ever find some of those people, and I like the way he said it doesn't have to be on the other end of a camera. It can be a friend or a colleague that really cares about you for who you are, not just what you produce. Yeah. I really believe in what you have to say. I think we got to have those people in our corner. Yeah. Because most days I believe in me too. Yeah. But when you're putting stuff out there every day to be consumed, loved, or hated, and if you're a human, and then of course you're going to have days it's like, whew, I don't know if I got anything to offer, or what I have to offer is maybe not worth putting out. So if you don't have a Brandon, or I could name some names on my team too, I think it's worth time. It's worth your time to invest in finding people that believe in who you are and who you've got the ability to become. Now I said this to somebody the other day who was feeling a little lonely, and they said, I really feel like I need a friend. And I said, well, no. They were saying, I really want to be a friend to somebody. There was 2 people I know well, and he said, I really feel like he needs a friend, and I want to be a friend to him. I can see how he's a little lonely. He's another artist friend of mine. You'd know him too. And I said to this guy, I said, well, to be a friend, you got to need a friend. And he said, more about that. And I said, I don't know that we can authentically show up to people unless we also have needs that need to be met relationally too. And that's how it becomes equitable.
Fair.
When 2 people can be with each other and one's not given more than the other. And that's why when I have people in my life like that, I want to try to get to know them as much as I can. Tell me about what's going on. It's not just every day is what are you producing, how are we doing. We're talking about work 90% of the time is what we do with each other. Yeah. Some of the time I got to know. Tell me who you're dating, what's going on. You having a baby? Let's talk about it. So I can get to know the human beside it. That's really what this podcast and these conversations is all about. You do some cool things that I highly respect, and you'll continue to do those. I can't wait to see where this record's going to go. But at the end of the day, you're a good human.
Thanks for that.
And along the journey, I know you've had great humans around you. And what I was seeing with those feelings coming up is I was seeing you kind of reminisce a little bit. And I was wondering if you were thinking about some of the impactful people in your story.
Oh, yeah.
Some that are there and some that maybe you're grieving that aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear about that too, because I know we're at that arc where you had all this wild, kind of perceivable, however people define success, right. Touring with the Taylor Swifts and all these big things and Grammy nominations. And then as every career, there's an arc, there's dips, there's ups and downs and challenges. And then here we are today. And we spend a lot of time on the front half. We won't have as much time to spend on the middle, which I'd love to. I told you when we sat down, you were like, I've seen your podcasts. I like them, but one of them went like 3 hours. Can we not do that?
No, I asked if we could beat it, to be fair.
Oh, you did?
You were like, do you have a hard out? And I was like, no.
I thought you meant beat it the other way.
Let's see if we can make it 5 hours. Challenge accepted.
That made me so happy that you love these long conversations too, because I do too. It drives some people crazy, but I love long conversations. Well, good. We're not in a hurry then. But I would like to hear that part of kind of once you started to really get momentum. What was that experience like for you interpersonally? What was it like professionally? And then, yeah.
What was your third part?
Well, I was getting ready to do. I'm the worst. I think I'm Jason Bateman here. Do you have any podcasts that you listen to?
So many.
Yeah. Smartless is one of my favorites. I like a lot of podcasts, but I like Smartless. I think those guys are really funny. It's kind of, I can throw them on when I don't want to think about anything. I usually am laughing, but Bateman asked the most long run-on questions, and his two buddies give him a lot of shit about it. You know,
I get the reference now.
Especially Will. I mean, it's so fun to watch their play. And I noticed, I was like, oh, shoot, I'm Jason Bateman. I do the same thing. So I don't ask a one-parter. I ask like a 7-parter to the point where you're like, what'd you ask me?
No, I love it.
That's why. So I think where I was going to go after asking you about the rise was, and then tell me about the experience of when it cooled off a little bit. When you were really hot to, you know.
Well, I mean, a quick note there is like focus on what you focus on. Something is always moving up and to the right. You just got to find it. You know what I mean?
Ooh, that'll preach.
And so that's a new practice. Something's always growing. Something's always getting better. My coach puts it in the form of find the perfect. It's not toxic positivity. It's just find where this is perfect right now, and you can. It allows me to settle. I mean for me, right? It's building a studio when you're 9, 10. I don't remember what age I was when I got my first Pro Tools rig, but building a studio, writing songs, making stuff, playing shows, Also, always negotiating at these shows because I grew up playing Cajun music, right? So, like, I'm expected to show up and play a very traditional music and songs that people have heard before. And there's an expectation that they're going to be able to dance. In the meantime, I'm writing some weird shit. I wouldn't say weird shit, but, like, for that anything's weird in the wrong context, right? And I was really pushing it because I had all these songs that I really wanted to play that were blues or country or rock or this or whatever, alternative, etc., pop. But I was hired to play Cajun music, so it was like that negotiation is something I'm very used to. So, starting, playing shows, years of just playing shows, writing, all that, in Nashville. Finally get, publishing deal first, so I'm writing full time. Label, maybes, we don't get it until like one lands. Craig Kalman came to Nashville. He listened to the stuff and he was like, I'm in. And that's the first time I'd heard anybody really convicted about what I was doing and like understood it. And I felt so confident because of that. That changed my own perspective, right? Because I'd heard a lot of like, we think it's really cool, we just don't know what to do with it. Now, obviously, I've come to learn how valuable that information is and how quickly I need to get it. But so then the launching point, right? Now we're on the hunt. I've got 100 songs. Now we're on the hunt for like the song, which is like I remember one day Scott Hendricks called me after I had turned in Wanted, and he was like, listen, I think that's the number one that we've been looking for. Like, I think that's the big song. We just need a launching song. So keep writing. At the time, I was devastated because I was like, oh my God, how many songs am I going to have to write? And am I going to have to figure out a formula? Because I feel like I'm giving everything and I'm pouring everything I've got. And nothing's really lined up yet. And then Storm Warning happened with Gordy and Busby. I was a huge fan of Gordy. Somebody had given me Sunburn, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. And then somebody else had shown me Busby's project, and I was obsessed. And obviously Busby was writing a lot of stuff too that I was obsessed with. So being in the room with the two of them, all my favorite influences just showed up, and I just made whatever we wanted. That the riff for Storm Warning is it's modeled after something I saw a guy named Turtle play. He was a guitar player in my hometown, and I was just playing something he would have played. And it's a riff now, you know? I mean, it's for me, it's become a signature riff, which for me, it's like I could pick up a guitar and play that riff just because it's what I saw. It's modeled after pieces of what I saw him play. And obviously, with Busby and Gordy in the room, we turned it into this, like, you know, 4-bar phrase. So all that to say, there's a lot of creation. There's a lot of making with sort of no... And I struggle without, like, a goal in sight. I had a goal, right? The first single. There was no boundaries on that. There's no structure to that. It's just like, we'll know it when we hear it. It's like, will you? So hundreds of songs later, I play Storm Warning for Management. They freak out. I'm like, oh, because I didn't think that was going to be the first single. I just thought, I love this song. It's fun. It's weird, and I love it. And then label gets excited. Next thing, doors are closed. We're done writing, you're going to the studio. And Dan Huff was like on standby, and by the grace of God, that very patient man gave me 7 months of his life where I'm the only person that he worked with.
Wow.
And I still he deserves saint status for that. But we spent that, you know, we worked on 4 songs.
Some of you, we're talking insider language, but if you know music, and if you don't, look up some of these people. I'm talking about, if you don't know Dan, it's legend, Scott Hendricks. Legend. Busby, rest in peace, legend. There's some great people that you're talking about here. And I'm loving it because I'm like, I know the characters, but I want to make sure that those that don't know it, look these people up. Yeah.
Please do. And I'm also giving little tidbits that are easy to search too, like the Sunburn record. Do yourself a favor. But so all of a sudden we're in the studio for 7 months, and I'm making 4 songs, and the label's listening. And then that started in October, and then by like February, we had 10 songs, and it was like, okay, we have a ad date. I think it was April 24th, if I remember correctly, which means the label has decided we're going to put out a single. We're going to bring it to country radio. I'm going to go to every single reporting station, meaning virtually every country radio station in the United States in person, and shake their hands and beg them to play the song. And we're going to have a specific date that we're going to ask all of them to start playing it, which helps when you're tracking all this data on the chart side, because the chart sees this is a popular song, and so you start moving and doing the thing. So from Radio Tour, man, it was just like, so, you know, I go off and do this one big show in New Orleans, and that's kind of the kickoff. We invite a bunch of radio programmers into New Orleans, and I do 2 shows. One was with a full band, so that they could see how much I loved playing live shows and how much that's where my heart comes to life. And then another, which was a form of what I was about to take on Radio Tour, which we built this little studio that would travel. It would go in and out of every station, and I would record the song in front of people live.
Oh, wow.
I would record each piece and sort of take them through, quote unquote, take them through the recording process. So it was really fun. It was a lot, and I at first was kind of terrified of it, and then I fell in love with it, and then I got really tired of doing it, but people still talk about it, so it accomplished the goal. And we went to every so from that show in whatever that was, April, I went to every radio station for 3-4 months, and did the radio tour, but did it very differently, doing this little studio thing. I'm saying all that to say it went from me sitting at my house one April going, when is this ever going to happen, to without knowing it, things started happening, and I was just on the ride of my fucking life. And those 3 months of radio tour, we had a band of guys that I loved playing with, but we didn't have enough shows to keep a band together. Within the 3 months of that radio tour, we had 200 shows for the rest of the year, and that just kept going.
Wow.
I jumped on tour with Taylor in August of that year. That started the previous year, that process. And we did 10 shows. And
what tour was that? I'm trying to remember.
Taylor's, it was the Speak Now tour.
She was already in stadiums by then, right?
We did one stadium.
Okay.
Together, Lincoln Financial in Philadelphia. And then we did a lot of arenas 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
We did 2 nights in Chicago. We did 2 nights in St. Louis. We did 2 nights in D.C. So it was a lot. Talk about a great way to learn what arena touring looks like, from like a high level, well organized, really well run organization. And that's also where like my little VIP meet and greet started, where I would go to literally tweet that I was going to coffee houses, and that's where we'd do our meet and greets. And so from that point on, it was just nonstop. I mean, we were playing 200 shows. Because I remember, like, when I was younger, several years before, sitting in Louisiana, I was watching the Lost Lonely Boys do an interview, and they were like, yeah, we're doing 200 shows a year, and that's, to me, I saw that, and I was like, okay, that's the number, that's success. And then it was just, playing clubs, half full. We'd come back 6 months later. We'd play those same clubs. They'd be kind of full, maybe sold out. Then we went on the road with, with Flats. We went on the road with Carrie for like 7 months. And I mean, honestly, there was like 3 years where it was just, it's all a blur, because it was just shows after shows after shows. And
Did you enjoy it?
I did.
That 3-year run?
I did. Yeah, because for me, I didn't have to think about anything but doing the thing that I loved. Pressure, yes, sure. Anxiety, absolutely. Learning some things the easy way and the hard way, absolutely, all of it. But yeah, I was living the dream. I didn't know about vision boarding or manifesting, but like my first year in Nashville, while I was doing the accelerated graduation course, I was on Google Earth every day, finding every arena in every town and writing down what their in-stage capacity looked like, figuring out where their loading docks were, how many buses could fit in the parking lot, and I was dreaming. I was saving pictures of tour buses, and I was dreaming. I was like, all right, this is what I want to do.
This is that, it's a unique quality, but I know so many artists that know nothing about the business around them. And it seems like this is where the nerd part that you were self-affirming earlier is like, I'm so proud of the nerd part of me that wants to know everything. It's kind of cool that you go that deep, and here's how ads work at radio, and here's how the bus. So you've always kind of been wired that way. You just want to get in there and know.
Yeah.
You've referenced it as rabbit holes a few times, and you were kind of like, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, let's go.
Yeah, I'm your guy, for sure. I love it. I'm obsessed with it, I think that's the toughest part about onboarding a new crew member, is saying, like, when they're like, if I'm doing my job, the artist won't know I'm there, and everybody on my team is like, oh, no, you're gonna have a lot of conversations with her, just because I love it, and I enjoy it.
And then, so you had all this success, and then tell me what happens kind of after that. I remember when we were talking early on that. Navigating some of the I've seen it with everybody I've worked with that has had like this kind of J-curve moment, and then it either planes or it does what it does. That can be super hard for people. Is it hard for you?
I think because again, something's always moving in the right direction. I was focused on a set of things, and anything can feel weird if it's in the wrong place. And I think for me, like, watching Invisible would, looking back, be a transition moment, because that was easily still the most. I mean, I'm watching this song is exploding in countries I've never been to right now. Without me doing anything.
Wow.
Like, it's not a campaign that we launched. It's just, it finds its people, and they take it, and it's theirs, which is exactly what I want to make music for. So Invisible, we had some radio success, and for me, I'm looking at, okay, I'm finally playing the rooms I want to play. I've got the team that I want to be surrounded by. They're all incredibly talented. They're all passionate about what they do, and we've set the right energy among these people. Right, we've established what kind of team we want to build, and everybody's feeling it, and it's connecting, and it's working. At the same time, I'm getting to do all the things I want to do. I'm bringing 2 trucks worth of gear, and I've got lights and videos, and I'm doing all that fun stuff, right? I've got a space in the back of the bus where I can also work in the studio. We're doing weekends, so I've got some days at home to work. So I'm finally figuring out this balance, and obviously it's connected in my mind at the time analytically to, okay, well, this succeeded, and therefore this succeeded, and therefore all these pieces have to go in this order. And so when those pieces stop going in that order, I panic. There's so many things out of my control. The only thing I can do is make music, and just keep showing up. And there were some challenges. Invisible was a very intimate song. It's a very personal song. Like looking back, of course it had challenges in certain places, meaning, if you're wanting it to succeed in certain, the song has to be, you have to give that song the right space. And you have to also readjust and recalibrate your dashboard so that you're looking at how it connects with people versus how well it's doing in these specific places, in these specific ways. And so I think that was a bit of a transitional period for me. That took me a while to kind of come along and appreciate. One of the most profound... Thank God, hindsight 2020. Like looking back, what I see in the year that I released Invisible, it's like somebody opened a door that I hadn't, like I was aware of, right? We've talked about how much like Bart and Mercy Me and like those songs kind of gave me the right to write hopeful things and write about life and not just write about relationships. And I feel like someone kind of silently opened a door during that time, and like so many beautiful things started flooding through. I wasn't paying attention to it. I was too focused on, wait, but how is this doing? How is this doing? How is this doing? Meanwhile, now, looking back 10 years later, I see that, man, there's still, it's like just this beautiful snowstorm of like flowers coming in through that door. Every day it surprises me. So I think had I been my coach, I would have said, let's adjust what you're focusing on, and know that success can't be recreated any kind of way. I'm sure, and I don't know this for sure, but I've talked to a few artists, even if you were to say, we're going to go and we're going to have, like this specific song is going to be this specific kind of success at radio, and then we're going to do this specific kind of tour. Even if they were to repeat that pattern, I'm sure that there's differences in impact. I'm sure that there's differences in connection. I'm sure that there's differences in so many different categories that even if I were to sort of like craft versions of my career to recreate, I don't know. I think now I get to look at it and go, oh, it's really fun to follow the flow. And to see where it's going. And the scary part is when I don't know where it's going, but it's always going somewhere, and I just have to kind of follow it. So that time period where, things kind of transitioned, it's so fun. I think in the past I've been kind of defensive about that time because it's like, yeah, I'm sure and maybe that's part of it too, right? Looking at numbers, et cetera, it's very easy to say, well, things changed, and in some people's eyes, it's like, well, as you describe it, like a bit of a roller coaster. There's an up, there's a down. For me, I also think that there's a lot of ups in that time that people just didn't see as well as I did. And I think I was looking at a lot of it through other people's lenses. And I think some of my defensiveness is like, well, I don't want to look at it through those lenses. I want to look at it through the purity of kind of how I've experienced it, in that there's tattoos of those lyrics. That's success. There are still people telling me stories about that song. And so I think that just redefines success in a lot of ways. I mean, there are a lot of things I want to achieve. There's a lot of things that I want, the number one here and the sold out show here. Like the business person in me, when I put that hat on, absolutely, I'm aiming for that. And at the end of the day, right, the whole I promised myself I wouldn't say at the end of the day too many times, but I do believe that my love for music, when I go back to the center, redefining success as something you touched on in the intro, which is, quiet therapy, subtle ways to allow people to feel and feel safe to feel.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you've been open about your mental health journey, especially the last few years, and now are really wanting to make sure that you're out loud about the impact or the undercurrent that you hope these songs land with people. And I probably have always been that way, but now it feels like you're using your voice even in a little bit more of a forward, I said advocate forward way, but you see the value in being someone that a lot of people might look up to and be a fan of based on what they know about you. And you're saying, yeah, there is that part of me that, you know, my song's in your car right now, and I appreciate that. But there's also the human side of me, and I want you to hear about that story. Why has that been important to you to either engage in therapy and coaching? You've referenced your coach, and you referenced Mark, who I love, and the time we spent together. Why is it important to you? Why did you feel like I'm really in a season where I need it, or and why is it important to you to kind of write this album right now?
I think I both have pieces of an answer to that, and I'm also still like finding pieces of that answer.
Processing it.
Yeah. I think Invisible taught me a lot. Dear God taught me even more, potentially, which is another song I'm referencing. That song is on a independent album, and it's, you know, one of the most successfully streamed songs that I have, which is one of my measurements of success, right? But that tells me that because of the way that song has found people and found success, that tells me the impact and the connection. You know, both looking through data, but also realizing that it's doing its own thing. And so there's a beauty in that. It's a deeper song, right? It's a very, it's kind of a heavy song, all things considered. But I don't know. I love sharing it. I love, I think it goes back to that hope that I felt listening to, you know, So Long Self on Coming Up to Breathe, you know, or, you know, Stand from the Me and My Gang record. I'm trying to think of other songs as examples, but I think there's just always been a part of me that's been drawn to that. You know, the communication of you're not alone has always been a really big underlying current. Kind of honestly maybe going to the point that you were making, where you can't really be a good friend unless you need a good friend too, right? Or need something. I'm paraphrasing if I'm saying that correctly. That goes back to, I think, our kind of what we were saying at the beginning. You got to make what you need. I needed that for a long time. I still need that. So I'm just making stuff that I need, I guess. Yeah. And I want to share more of it because I want people to understand the context, or for there to at least be a place for people to go and get the context if they want it. You know, if they want to love these songs or hate these songs, I don't want to know about that. But you know, if you want to build your relationship with these songs completely independent of me, great, even better. Like, because I've also really worked to transition from like this whole album is about me, to like, no, this is about, I mean, definitely my lens, right? But so much of Evergreen is manifestation. I remember calling my manager and just being like, I think I understand, because Evergreen sat as this like concept for 5 years. And the realization was, I don't have to be there yet. I can still write about it. And in fact, I feel like there's even more value if I'm both practicing in real time, failing and succeeding in practicing this manifestation exercise, this prayer of sorts. So yeah, I don't know. I write it because I need it.
That's I love that because I want to be Evergreen, and I actually ChatGPT, tell me everything you know about Evergreen. It was interesting to see how I defined the concept of Evergreen.
What'd you learn?
Which is such a beautiful, well, I mean, it's kind of low-hanging fruit is what you would think it is something consistent, something loyal, something that you can count on, something that's going to be there in good seasons and bad. That's the metaphoric answer versus the traditional nature answer, but both were really interesting. And I thought, what a neat way to think about being with someone, whether it be a romantic partner or just a friend or just a community of people, is I want to be your Evergreen. And so I love that frame, but it's really cool to hear that you're manifesting what that could be versus be where you are. It's such a way to, because You've mentioned a couple times at that time I didn't know about manifestation, and I didn't know about building your dreams on whiteboards. I'm assuming, do you use that practice now?
Yeah, and like, by the way, anybody listening, like I'm always very cautious, because I think there's a lot of forms of manifestation, So when I use that word, I'm very careful. But for me, it's prayer. It is dreaming is a big one. I just dream. I love dreaming. That's where vision boards come in. That's all. I mean, there's always been a screensaver on my laptop. Sometimes I go through seasons where I'm ashamed of it because I don't want people to see how ridiculous it is. But it's tour buses. It's planes because I want to be a pilot. And it's places I've never been that I want to be.
You working towards that now, the pilot thing?
Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah.
That's a multi-year process, right?
Depends. Yes. I mean, yeah. It's been years. I mean, I got a birthday gift. My first introductory flight was a birthday gift when I was very early on in 2012, 13, something like that. And I've been working on it since, getting hours at a time. The biggest thing that I think it's made me realize, because the thing you have to be is proficient and consistent. And that requires structure. I'm a big fan of structure, and I crave structure. And so many parts of my life have not had structure, which has also called me up into, okay, how do I create the structure that I need more of and live in that versus, being a result of a lack of structure because I've let go and there is no structure. So I think one of the biggest lessons it's taught me is how to create the structure in my life where I feel safe enough to be proficient, to do it more often. Because I got a bunch of hours. My buddy Chad is a CFI. He was my first CFI, certified flight instructor. And every time I'm around, he'll see it on my schedule before I text him. And he's like, hey, man, do you have a day? You want to go flying? Most recently, I spent a concentrated amount of time, and he went up with me so many days in a row for so long, enough technically to get me close to finishing. And
wow.
And the realization was, if I'm not ready to be consistent, then I need to wait until I'm ready to be consistent. There's so many metaphors in flying for like life and or like career, everything from checklist. I mean, I'm writing a whole book on it right now, but I love flying both as a totally different thing from creativity, in that there is a checklist. There is a right and wrong way to do things. There's a good, there's a safe way to do things. And so, yeah. Anyway, I love the world of general aviation. Yeah.
You're, I love that. I've wouldn't be able to do it now from a physical standpoint, but I've always been intrigued by it. Anytime I get on a plane where I can share a seat up there and watch it and see how it all works, it's fascinating, because you're right. It's the checks and balances aren't just checks and balances that can benefit or optimize. They're actually life or death checks and balances. And if we treated our mental health that way, I think we'd probably be checking and balancing a lot more. Those of us that have been on the edge of our mental health, probably a little bit more proactive. And it's one of the gifts of talking about it, of going through intensive processes, of doing your work, of owning your adversity and stress, which we all have. It's just some of us find other ways to medicate it, numb it, run from it. I've done all those. I'll probably do them again. But I am really proud of some of the harder moments in my life, because it's pushed the priority forward for me to treat my mental health the same way I might if I were taking you up in an airplane. Because I know how difficult it can be if I neglect certain parts of my psyche and my mind and my heart and my body, then it's pretty predictable at this point where I'll end up, pretty depressed, isolated, all the things that it matters not that I work in this space and that I'm armed with a lot of tools, and some people may look at me as a guy that has a little platform that that doesn't happen to. Forget about it. I'm just as prone to anybody. But I think the more we can check off things and pay attention to exactly what we're doing and put some planning and thought around to it, the more preventative we can get around our health and wellness. But I'm excited about this album. You've been super generous with your time. And when the last time we were connecting, it was, I can't believe it's been a couple years ago. That's crazy. Because when you walked in, I felt like I had just seen you. And I knew at that time you were taking a quarter turn on your creative side and going to spend some time in LA, which I love. Yeah. I know primarily I've worked more in the country genre, being here in Nashville. It's kind of a geography thing. until the last few years, and now I'm really working a lot in pop and rock and other genres and hip hop, and it's been so fun. But I've had to go to other music hubs, i.e., LA, and be involved and to learn how they do what they do, which is in many ways, a different creative process than what we do in Nashville. So I love when I see Nashville go to LA and LA come to Nashville and New York and London. And you went out there for a while. Now you're back in Nashville. What was that experience like? And I guess tell us what you're up to now. What's fulfilling you now?
Yeah. During COVID, I had started doing some TV work in LA right before the pandemic. And I had said to my manager in the car that I wanted to really open myself up to more opportunities to be out there. I felt a calling. I think I needed a scene change. I think, kind of to your point, the geography of it all. What's wild is I think being out there showed me showed me so many other parts of Nashville that I had never seen because I lived here. So I saw a whole different side of Nashville just from watching from a different lens, which is something I'm so deeply grateful for. I needed a reset, a scene change, whatever you want to call it. I found a little place in the woods, in the hills, outside of, not in LA at all, close enough where I could still do business and feel productive, but found a place that felt like a little sanctuary, and just in a lot of ways too. That was sort of an accidental. I don't suppose you could call it an intensive, but in so many other ways, right? Like being in a city where I knew very little people. We were not on the road. I had just left several sort of like business partners in Nashville. That was a hard reset is what I'm trying to say. It was a hard reset. My circle of people changed. My intentions behind my circle of people changed a lot. And my relationship with what I do had a chance to get redefined. And I had a moment to say, what do I want? I've experienced so many forms of success that I've always wanted. What parts of it do I like? What parts of it could I leave behind? What parts of it do I want to carry with me? What parts do I want to continue to love? And what parts do I hope, love me back at some point? So I think that's just what I needed. And parts of it were by design, and obviously parts of it were just holding on for dear life as I just kind of accepted random things, So yeah, went out there, and I feel like in my time in the industry here for the first 10 years of my career, right? As we just spoke, it was just busy, and my identity was there. So much of it by choice. Like the scary starting over of who am I without any of that? I think I did that work out there. While working on the album, while writing, while sort of expanding, stretching, and trying, and working with so many different people and trying so many different things. Learned a lot. And also it was really interesting to see other people's, talk about, finding your mirrors, right? Also really interesting to see other people's perception of what I had created and what I was doing, both musically, but also just career. I think it was really helpful. It helped me kind of feel better about a lot of things that I was kind of unsure about. So, yeah, Red Sky. I knew when I made, back in 2018, I started a project called Wild Blue. I knew that I wanted, that project was I made it in my basement by myself without anybody watching. It was the first time I'd done anything like that. I knew there was an angsty side of that, so I knew there was sort of this place where some things needed to go, and that was Red Sky. And then it very quickly became but there also needs to be a place for everything to land. I experienced something when I went out there. One of the, early on when I was out there, we had to leave the place where the little sanctuary of a studio that I had, because there was a fire in the backyard. There was a 1,300 acre brush fire. And that was a very jarring experience for me. Luckily, everything was okay and everyone was okay. But that was a pretty profound lesson in, what do you leave with? What do you take with you? What matters? And that found its way into every part of my life, that lesson. It just started just seeping into everything that I was working on. And so, yeah, that was a beautiful time. And Evergreen kind of sat on the fringes, just kind of waiting. And I thought for a while that I had to be sort of like fully realized into this grounded nature until I came off the first tour back, and I was like, nope, Evergreen is not about already being there, because there's no such thing. So why would I make a project about being somewhere that there is no there? Everyone's in process, trust the process, etc. I've heard so many different forms of that, and so this was Evergreen became real, I think, when I came back from that tour in 2023. I had some songs ready for it, and I started writing just my little manifestation journal, and it became an album. And it's season one. Another thing that I've realized about myself is that I'd never want an album to be done, and that's not like I'm not okay with letting it go. I'm trying to create a business strategy that parallels the message of you're always in process, you're always on the journey. So we started this thing where every album is part of a series, and rather than doing an album in a deluxe, I'll do season 1, and then I'll do season 2, and if sometime a song comes up, I'll do season 3. So Evergreen this is season 1, comes out March 6th, etc. And I'm really proud of it. I think it's funny, a lot of things that I wrote about and tried to manifest ended up showing up.
Wow, I love that you're doing it episodic, kind of season-wise, because it does seem like it tells a story beginning to end. And there's a couple things I want to acknowledge that I took out of it. I love when you talked about someone else's dream. I love when you said no need to try, no need to pretend, and that your soul is on the mend. I mean, come on. Where we are all standing around the sun. I absolutely love that song, All Alone. Teach what no one else did. Can you recall that lyric? How
100%. Yeah. And I'm so glad to talk about it.
Nail it.
Around the Sun is the only, the 100%er on the album,
Yeah.
which means I wrote it by myself. I don't do that very often. That came at a very profound time. And the one message that I heard was, we're all still spinning around the sun, right? We're all still here together. There's a feeling of unity that it gave me. There's a feeling of a common thread. There's a feeling of humanity. And I think that was the only message I could figure out what to say and how to say. So I wrote it, and I love that song dearly. That's why I finished the project with it, even though it was the first single.
So good.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate
good.
that. The second verse talks about, I look around and I see more than I can fix. Was taught to love, but all my teachers left me this. So I'm going to teach them what I guess nobody did, which is how to be an optimist.
Yes. That was it. I was like, that's clever. That was good. So
Thanks.
You've got to hear that. You've got to hear that song.
I appreciate
and
that.
then you wrote about, I think it was in Human Again, where you said you were proud of yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just want to say that as a friend, somebody who's followed your journey, and it's good to be back in front of you. I didn't, it's been a while since we've connected, but I'm glad to hear you say that, because I remember you're like a lot of creative geniuses. You can be hard on yourself at times, and
I appreciate both parts of that statement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm glad to hear you bring this optimism to the dance and say, you know what, I'm really proud of myself. Even the way you framed the ups and downs of the road is like, damn, man, there was a lot of great stuff that I took away from that. And it feels like you've really done a beautiful job of what we call in our world just reframing our reality. Instead of camping out on what may not feel right or what doesn't work, what other people think may not be working, but we reframe it to suit where we are, how we're growing, what we're chasing, who we want to become. And it really feels like you nailed that in this album. And so I'm really proud of you as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I really appreciate you giving us the time that you did today. This was a wonderful conversation. What a great way to catch up. We probably would have done this anyway, and we did it this way so more people can hear from you and hear what you're about. And I really am excited on March 6th for you guys to be able to participate in what I just did before we started this conversation, which is a really great experience with season 1 of Evergreen.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the space. Thanks for the conversation.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to add? Anything we missed? Anything you want to talk about?
No, I mean, go keep me accountable on my socials. Make sure I keep showing up and keep playing.
Yeah. Honestly, I'll pick that. I think we should pick that piece up because I'm super proud of that. I appreciated the honesty of when we had that moment and you're like, I don't know if I should say that. And I make up that maybe I don't want to say that because I don't want people to think I'm not engaged with their
Yeah.
engagement.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, man, I've worked and I have prescribed that. Maybe you're going to prescribe it to me today. We'll reverse engineer. That's why you were here, is to tell me, you ought to think about doing this. Braden would be happy. If I just turned it over to you and got out of the way. But most of the artists that I know that hand off a lot of the duty around managing those accounts, but they're still the main event. They're still, you're trusting a team to help you capture your authentic story, are twice as engaged because you're twice as present. So I think anybody that thinks that artists that don't run their account aren't engaged, I've actually seen 180 degrees the opposite. Those that do are more present for their creative process. They're spending time doing things for you to engage with that you're going to enjoy. And they're very much have their hand on the pulse of the team that's running it. So I just want to back you up on that. I think it's a really wise move.
Thank you for saying that. Can I share something with that?
Of
that we
course.
can either edit or cut or whatever, but something that I learned a while back that helped me a lot. And I still to this day love it. When I'm thinking about, first of all, the thing that I do the most is just make stuff I love making. That's my 2 days a week. That's the only thing I'm doing is this is some kind of video. I'm going to try a thing. I'm going to see how it goes. If I'm smiling, if I'm laughing, if it feels good, I capture it. I also love editing it, right? So yes, there is like everything I'm making because it makes me happy right now. And I'm very proud of that. And I want everybody to know that. The other thing is, even though sometimes, like for me, I learned that the stress of posting was a little bit too much, right? The hitting that red button freaked me the fuck out. But there's also the added layer of, if I'm not great right then, if I'm not so steady, then obviously I am at risk of leaning towards, what if they say something bad, right? What if there's a negative comment? Yeah. If I'm great, I can focus on the good. But something that helped me remove that is the way that we work it is I send stuff to management, but they're all friends of mine, right? And it's sent in the form of a text thread. So I get to experience sharing all of it like I'm sharing it with a friend because that's exactly what I'm doing. And then it comes down to, that would probably be best at 5 o'clock tomorrow. Versus, so that's helped me stay, as you said, hope, in my view, that's my way of staying present. And I also know that if I keep showing up that way, I trust, and my belief is that I'll get to connect with all of these people in person at a show or, before a show, after a show, during a show, etc. And so that's kind of my through line and my faith in it.
That's super wise. I'm learning from you on that because I had a lot of people, when I first started getting a little momentum here, it even happened in the early days of Onsite when I was getting some momentum for with building Onsite. I would start to attract some critics. Obviously, the more eyes and ears, the more criticism you're going to get. And sometimes criticism can be really good if it's with the right intent, and a lot of times it can be garbage if it's just somebody just not in a good headspace and they're throwing some stuff your way that probably is theirs. But people would say if they're not talking bad about you, you don't have enough eyes on you yet. And I was like, I get that in theory. And then they would also say, you'll get to a point where the negative comments will feel as good as the positive comments because they're just comments. And I was like, I don't know that I'll ever get there. I'm just the way I'm wired. I'm a sensitive guy, and I read energy and emotion. I'm actually really good at what I do. But and sometimes I have to box out, and I know I'm going to get that. I hope we get more of that because I know it means we're going to grow a big platform and a lot of people will be encouraged, and we're probably going to attract people that aren't going to like us. That's just part of the game. But I think protecting our energy so that we continue to manifest and put the things out that we want to put out and not give too much stock. It's not here constructive criticism. Hopefully if we got good teams, they're giving us that in-house, and mine does. But when you get people that don't know, don't have context, and they haven't even really listened to the full thing, but they're throwing stuff at you, sometimes I don't want to hear that. Yeah. And I'll even tell them that. I was like, you can shield me from that. I'll be just fine. I don't want to take that home tonight. So I admire that too.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. It's really good to see you. That's Human School. Keep showing up. Keep getting honest. I'm Miles Adcox. I'll see you next time.